everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel, and this is Ancient History lesson number 4 part 1, Vedic Periods. In the next lesson I'm going to talk about Upanishads in detail. So you can see a chart here. Vedic period is divided into two parts, early Vedic period, later Vedic period. जो time frame मैंने दिया है it may vary because बहुत सारे sources में अलग अलग time frames दिए गए हैं, 100 साल आगे पीछे है, ठीक है, but this is the most accepted one, इसीलिए I've used these particular time frames. So for early Vedic period, it is 1500 to 1000 BC. So about 500 years this period lasted. And later Vedic period lasted from 1000 to 600 BC. That is for 400 years. So remember this. सारे sources में अलग अलग dates मिलेंगे, अलग अलग years मिलेंगे, 100 साल आगे पीछे होगा. Do not worry about it. Right? So the lesson is in a question answer format. Important facts are included here. So early Vedic period में कोई वर्णा system नहीं था. वर्ण system का मतलब है caste system नहीं था. Later Vedic period में वर्ण system developed, विवाह system developed, and there was increase in the use of iron. अब आयरन का इस्तेमाल इसीलिए बढ़ता गया बिकॉज जो आर्यंस थे दे मूव टू यूपी एंड बिहार अराउंड 1000 BC, राइट? और ईस्टर्न साइड जितना वो जा रहे थे उतना ही दे वर फेसिंग डेंस फॉरेस्ट एंड दैट वाज एन ऑब्स्टिकल बिकॉज वो वहाँ पे सेटल नहीं हो पा रहे थे, फार्मिंग नहीं कर पा रहे थे, सो दे हैड टू क्लियर आउट दैट thick dense forest. Therefore they started using iron axes and other iron equipment to clear out the forest. Question: what are Veds? Veds are texts indicating social religious tradition of early Aryans. Now let's understand in brief who are Aryans. There is a lot of conflict among historians, so we'll discuss that quickly. So left wingers का कहना है कि Aryans came from Central Asian countries like Iran, and evidences में they have provided us with study that they have done based on philosophy, archaeological remains. Right wingers are saying Aryans were local people, इंडिया के ही थे, और इसके एविडेंस में उन्होंने पहला वेद को यूज़ किया है. उन्होंने कहा है कि ऋग्वेद में कोई भी आउटसाइड इन्फ्लुएंस नहीं पाया जाता है, इसलिए आर्यंस बाहर से नहीं आए थे, वो इंडिया के ही रहने वाले थे, ठीक है, लोकल थे. और आर्यंस बाहर गए इंडिया से एंड दे इन्फ्लुएंस्ड अदर पीपल. यू कैन सी दैट राइट विंगर्स का जो पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू है उसे रिजेक्ट किया जाता है और लेफ्ट विंगर्स के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू थियोरी को एक्सेप्ट किया जाता है बिकॉज देयर आर लॉट मोर एविडेंसेस टू सपोर्ट द फैक्ट दैट आर्यंस केम फ्रॉम सेंट्रल एशियन कंट्रीज. Question: who was the first person who for the first time said Sanskrit is very much close to European languages? That was Sir William Jones. He had translated Abhigyan Shakuntalam and Manusmriti. Now let's talk about Max Muller, who never came to India, but he said he was the first person in fact to say that Aryans came from Central Asia. And to prove that, he gave an example how close the languages are. Maitri in Sanskrit is mother, right? Or matriarch in European nations, you know, matriarchy, patriarchy. So similarly, it sounds pretty same. And they also mean the same, right? Mother, father. So that is how he was trying to prove the fact that Sanskrit and European languages are pretty much closely related and interlinked to each other. He further studied Asian languages and said that Aryans came from South Russia to Central Asia and then they came to India. And Aryans spoke Indian European languages. जो इंडिया में आके बस के सेटल हो गए उनको इंडो आर्यंस कहा जाता है एंड दे स्टार्टेड स्पीकिंग संस्कृत. सो आर्यंस वर एक्चुअली लिंग्विस्टिक पीपल हु यूज्ड टू स्पीक संस्कृत. ये कोई रेस नहीं था, दे वर नॉट अ रेस बट दे वर पीपल हु स्पोक अ लैंग्वेज कॉल्ड संस्कृत. लेट्स टॉक अबाउट वेद. तो 4 वेद है, ऋग्वेद, सामवेद, यजुर्वेद, अथर्ववेद. इन सारे वेद को आप क्रोनोलॉजिकल ऑर्डर में याद रखें. एंड ऋग्वेद जो है वो अर्लीस्ट वेद है दैट वाज डेवलप्ड ड्यूरिंग अर्ली वैदिक पीरियड. द रिमेनिंग 3 वर क्रिएटेड और इट केम इनटू बीइंग ड्यूरिंग द लेटर वैदिक पीरियड. क्वेश्चन: व्हाट इज द मेन थीम ऑफ ऋग्वेद? सो द मेन थीम ऑफ ऋग्वेद आर द हिम्स and it talks about god of nature, it talks about wind god, water, fire, agni, vayu. Okay, samved, it talks about music, so it is lyrical form of the mantras. Yajurved talks about rituals plus sacrifice, bali चढ़ाना, fast करना और भी अलग तरीके के जो sacrifices है, that is what Yajurved is talking about. And Atharvaved is all about charms and spells. It talks about black magic. An important fact about Atharva Ved, it is the first book on medicine. Yes, most of you must be thinking, abhi aapne bataya ki it's about black magic. So, people used to believe and still many people believe कि नज़र लगने से किसी की तबीयत खराब हो जाती है, कुछ बुरा हो जाता है. So people used to fall sick not because of biological reasons but black magic. That is what they believed. And अथर्व वेद में उसके solutions, उपाय भी बताए गए थे जो people used to rely on. Let's talk about format of Vedas. So there are 4 parts. कैसे लिखा जाता है हर एक वेद को, उसमें sections कौन कौन से वो देखते हैं. The first one is Samhita, collection of hymns. Second is Brahmana, जिसमें rituals के बारे में लिखा गया है. आर्यंका, philosophical concepts को समझाया गया है. And उपनिषद के पार्ट में वेदांत है, that is like the conclusion of the Veds. So Upanishads are basically the concluding parts of Veds. Now each Ved has Shruti, that is oral learning. कुछ मंत्र ऐसे होते हैं जो हमें याद हो जाते हैं, ठीक है, और जनरेशन टू जनरेशन उसे पास ऑन किया जाता है, जैसे कि गायत्री मंत्र हो गया, इफ़ यू आर अवेयर अबाउट दैट. सो ऐसे जो मंत्र होते थे उन्हें याद किया जाता था एंड उन्हें श्रुति कहा जाता था. ओके. Now let's talk about early Vedic period or Rig Vedic period. So initially the Aryans lived in the land known as Sapta Sindhu, land of 7 rivers: Indus, Beas, Jhelum, Ravi, Chenab, Satluj, Saraswati. So remember the names: Sindhu, Vipash, Vitasa, Parushini, Asikni. Remember these names, right? Now let's quickly understand political structure. Monarchical form of government था with a king known as Raja or Rajan. Patriarchal families होती थी जहाँ पे male will be the head of the family and Jana was the largest social unit in Rigvedic times. Social grouping में कुल था, that is family, Gram, Vishu, Jana. Tribal assemblies were called Sabhas and Samitis. Examples of tribal kingdoms are Bharats, Matsyas, Yadus and Puru. Now let's look at the social structure. Women enjoyed a respectable position. They were allowed to take part in Sabhas and Samitis. There were women poets as well like Apala, Lopamudra. Cattle, especially cows, became very important. Monogamy was practiced but polygamy was observed among royalty and noble families. There was no child marriage. Social distinctions existed but they were not rigid. Now talking about economic structure during early Vedic period, so they were pastoral and cattle rearing people. They practiced agriculture, they had horse chariots, rivers were used for transportation, cotton and woolen fabrics were spun and used. Initially trade was conducted through barter system, but then later on coins came into being and they were called Nishka. So coins were used later on. Religion during the early Vedic period. So they worshipped natural forces that we have already discussed like earth, fire, wind, rain, thunder. Indra, the lord of thunder, was the most important deity. Other deities were Prithvi, Agni, Varun, Vayu. Female deities were Ushas and Aditi. There were no temples and no idol worship. Now let's discuss later Vedic period or painted grey ware period. Aryans moved eastwards and occupied western and eastern UP and Bihar regions. Let's understand the political structure now. Kingdoms like Mahajanpads were formed by amalgamating smaller kingdoms. So all the smaller kingdoms were grouped in and Mahajanpads were formed. I'm going to discuss about Mahajanpads, Upanishads and many more points in detail in part 2. King's power increased and various sacrifices were performed by him to enhance his power. Sacrifices were Rajasiya, Vajapiya and Ashwamedh sacrifices. Sabhas and Samitis lost their importance. Now let's talk about social structure. Look, early Vedic period में क्या हो रहा था, occupation के basis पे distinction होता था, ठीक है, कि भाई कोई cobbler है, कोई potter है, कोई farmer है, कोई goldsmith है, ठीक है, उस तरह से distinctions होते थे और सबका respect किया जाता था. अब क्या हो रहा है in later Vedic period, वर्ण सिस्टम को ज़्यादा इंपॉर्टेंस दे रहे हैं, क्षत्रिय, ब्राह्मण, इस तरह से वो डिस्टिंक्शंस कर रहे हैं सोशल स्ट्रक्चर में. अनटचेबिलिटी का कॉन्सेप्ट भी यहीं से शुरू होता है कि बिकॉज दैट इज़ अ लोअर कास्ट दोज पीपल आर अनटचेबल. तो ये जो सारे सामाजिक बीमारियां हैं वो लेटर वैदिक पीरियड में शुरू होती है. तो ऑक्यूपेशन के बेसिस पे जो डिस्टिंक्शन थे उसे कम इंपॉर्टेंस दिया जाने लगा और जो इस तरह के डिस्टिंक्शंस है, कास्ट के बेसिस पे डिस्टिंक्शंस हैं, उसको ज़्यादा महत्व दिया जाने लगा. So the society was divided into these 4 social rankings. The first one, the top rank was of Brahmins. They were priests. Then Kshatriyas, who were rulers. Vaishyas were agriculturists, traders, and artisans, and finally Shudras, who were meant to serve the upper three classes. Women were not permitted to attend public assemblies like sabhas and samitis, जो early Vedic period में हो रहा था. Position in the society diminished. Child marriages became very common. Subcastes based on occupation also emerged. गोत्र्स व इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइज. जो सामाजिक बीमारियां लेटर वैदिक पीरियड में शुरू हुई उनसे हम आज भी लड़ रहे हैं. सो यू कैन जस्ट इमेजिन उस वक्त स्थिति क्या होगी. इकोनॉमिक स्ट्रक्चर में हम ये देखते हैं कि एग्रीकल्चर रिमेन द टॉप मोस्ट ऑक्यूपेशन. उसके बाद इंडस्ट्रियल वर्क जैसे पॉटरी, मेटल वर्क एंड कार्पेंट्री, दे ऑल केम इनटू बीइंग. ज़्यादा फ्लरिश करने लगे ड्यूरिंग लेटर वैदिक पीरियड. एंड देयर वाज फॉरेन ट्रेड बिटवीन फार ऑफ रीजन्स लाइक बेबीलोनिया, सुमेरिया. Talking about the religion now, Prajapati, who was called the creator, and Vishnu, the preserver, became important gods. Indra and Agni lost their significance. Importance of prayers diminished, and rituals and sacrifices became more elaborate and important. The priestly class became very powerful, and they dictated the rules of the rites and rituals. Because of this orthodoxy, Buddhism and Jainism emerged towards the end of this period. Vedic literature. So we already know about the four Veds and उसमें क्या लिखा है, ठीक है? The word Ved originated from the root Vid, which means spiritual knowledge or subject of knowledge or means of acquiring knowledge. चार वेद हैं, ऋग्वेद, यजुर्वेद, सामवेद, अथर्ववेद. ऋग्वेद was composed during early Vedic period. Later three were composed during the later Vedic period. We'll end the lesson with some important facts. So Rig Ved is the earliest Ved and it has 1028 hymns in praise of God. Yajurved has details of rules to be followed during the sacrifices. Samved has a collection of songs. The origins of Indian music are traced in Samved. Atharvaved has a collection of spells and charms. Besides these Veds, there were Brahmanas, Upanishads, Arankas, and epics of Ramayana and Mahabharata. Brahmanas are prose about Vedic hymns, rituals, and philosophies. Arankas deals with mysticism, rites, and rituals. Upanishads are philosophical texts dealing with soul, mysteries of nature. Ramayana was authored by Valmiki. Mahabharata was written by Ved Vyas. This is it for today. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope it was helpful to all of you. Part 2 is even more important. And remember the slogan, we can do it, right? You can achieve whatever you want. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'll see you in the next one.